Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today I thought I would give you a little bit of an insight on how Endgame looks like in Torchlight Infinite. After playing Mind Control, I rerolled to Einherjar Strength Stacker, which is basically a Sentinel skill, kind of like a totem skill, but it works more like a Mirage Archer out of Path of Exile, right? Where you place down the sentry and it follows you around right behind you. And this is not going to be a full build guide, more of like a showcase, because this is extremely expensive and nothing that most people can really play. A lot of people who don't have 12 hours a day to game will farm for this for a month or more. And I'll just show you where I'm at right now, kind of transitioning into deep space at the moment, and also maybe a little bit of tips for people who will down the line transition to deep space. Disclaimer here at the start, I currently have around about 60,000 FEs invested into this character, so I know it is not in any shape or form viable for most people who aren't playing 12 hours a day since the league started. Maybe something you can aspire to at some point if it's your first league, maybe in some of the following leagues. But I wanted to make this more as like a teaching thing where I show you certain setups that you can use in Endgame and maybe use on your setups, or just learn a thing or two about Strength Stacker, or at the end we're going to talk a little bit about deep space. Now before we start, you can see right here, this is Einherjar right on my back here, and there is, once again, no clicking, complete auto bomber, 1, 2, 3, 4 totems. The first thing you have to know, which you probably won't unless you read the help menu, is you cannot get more than 4 totems in this game. Regardless of how much maximum you have, there's another maximum on top of that you cannot get over. Now this is the smoothest build I have played in this game in the last 11 seasons. Straight up. I'm going to show you some profound mapping. Like I said, I'm currently setting up my immunities for deep space, so I can't really do it right now, but I will have it in the next 24 hours or so. I will be starting deep space with the build. But yeah, as you can see right here, it doesn't matter. You can whirl, right? You don't need to channel anything. You don't get any minus move speed. Your Mirage Archers are just absolutely popping off while you are, let me put on the sound a little bit, while you are basically just, I don't know, free to do whatever. You can whirl around, nothing happens to you. It's extremely good for the lead mechanic. It almost always reaches the 30 or 30 to 32 cap. And yeah, you're just absolutely blasting. And we're strength stacking, and there's a few reasons for that. This build, like I said, is extremely expensive. At the start, it will seem unreasonably expensive because you're like, oh, my mind control did way more on less budget. But the thing is, there's a lot of like setup items that you need in this game in order to even play the build. And after that, the scaling kind of starts. So I'm currently running a strat with like beacons. I'm running a strat with like league mechanic, and I'm just kind of rushing through. And yeah, I am completely overgeared at this point for profound and basically ready for deep space. Now, this whole build revolves around Einherjar, which is kind of like just a normal sentry skill, right? You plop it down and it does damage, right? It fires arrows like a totem would, right? Like in PoE, a ballista. And it all revolves around this last support. And this is Fellowship. What this does is, if you don't have it, you can see right here, I put down totems, I move the totems, I don't know, fire whenever, and I have an automation that replaces them every 10 meters, right? So I don't have to press anything regardless. But what happens if you put them on your back with the Fellowship is they follow you around. And there is something in this game called tracking range, which you can get on these gloves, up to 50% of it. And I made this picture to show you how strong tracking range is. So this is how far the Einherjar fires without any tracking range. So it's kind of like a screen wide, right? And as you can see, with the tracking range, you're going 1.5 screens, which means while they're following around, when an enemy is like over there in the very corner, they already start firing. So you get into a boss arena and you're not even spawned in and they're already starting to fire. We get our +3 totems to get to 4 with the passive tree. God of Machines right here, +1. We get +1 from our support, which is Multifaceted Guard, and then also +1 from the gloves itself. Now, on the topic of strength stacking, I kind of try to combine what you get overall from strength stacking. For example, if you compare it to dexterity stacking gives you more damage than strength stacking, but you don't get a lot of the defensive stuff. So you get life, you get armor per strength, and that one is just really big because a lot of builds will first get a ton of damage and then struggle to get defenses and get into profound and then deep space. It is very hard to do if it's not inbuilt into your character. Mind control has the same problem, but other than these things that we're getting, we are also getting Blade Dancer's Edges, which we're using anyways because of the skill. And this is why the skill fits so well, is because you get armor effective rate per sentry. So if you don't know, the way armor works in this game is you can get to up to 80% less hit damage taken to physical. Usually, you start at 60% of that being converted to Ellie. So for example, if I had a normal build and I was capped on 80% here, it would be around about 50% on the non-physical mitigation. But you can increase the effectiveness of armor for non-physical damage with this stat right here, and it's a sentry only thing. Back in the past, people used to use Rock Magus to get this, but it got severely nerfed. We're probably going to use that down the line as well. But yeah, basically going from 50 to 75% with this is already like 50% less elemental damage taken, and you can increase that even further. The key items you need for this build is first Magnus Scar with the life and additional fire damage per strength. The flat damage from Magnus Jealousy, this is basically all the flat damage we're getting, 4 to 6. You can also get this on your bow up here, but it is extremely hard to get. And basically you just use your bow as a stat stick because all the damage comes from here. There's also different things from the passive tree that scale you, which we're not using in this version currently, but we can get it on slates. For example, 1% armor for every 24 strength, and then also the 1% fire damage per 20 strength, and the +1 max life per 5 strength. You can also get damage per 27 stats from a priceless amulet, and you can get up to 1% damage per 8 stats, and then also all stats and strength on a priceless amulet. My survivability has been like this basically forever. Now, if you're wondering what my current DPS is, this is on my clear setup. I have 1.7. I guess we're already like around about reaching 2 trillion damage. Now, the other thing you can do here is for single target, you will swap Fellowship right here for advancement, and then you swap your Blurry Steps for a aim, which gives you more damage, and then we should be a little bit under 4 trillion in total. So yeah, you have a very nice swap. What the advancement does is it basically takes the Mirage Archer stuff away, but it makes it so the totems can stack higher. It just means more damage, basically. Now, when it comes to this skill, a lot of people will tell you that this feels clunky, and then you see my intro where I breeze through a map, and it is like I said, the most fun and like smooth skill I've ever played in this game personally. Where does that come from? Well, a lot of people build this incorrectly. They do not think about quality of life stats, which, just so you understand, doesn't really take away from the damage if you do certain things. So the first thing that you need is going to be attack speed, ton of attack speed. Even if it doesn't seem like the best damage, it will definitely help out. You get it from, I don't know, basically everywhere. Gear, I guess maybe like attack speed on your hero memories, right? Get it wherever you can, and it's going to feel really smooth. But the second one that most people neglect is projectile speed. And in order to scale projectile speed, which is a quality of life stat, it doesn't increase your damage, but it can if you get Gale, right? Gale means 60% of your projectile speed is applied to a more multiplier. So what that means is, if you currently look at my character, we go over to Arrow Einherjar, I scroll down, and projectile speed, I currently have 286% in total. You take this 286 times 0.6, that is giving me a 171% more multiplier. And the third thing you need is tracking range. And I understand that there's better damage options for this build, but I honestly do not think I would ever play this build without Blade Dancer's edges. The 50% tracking range makes the skill into something else. It makes the build viable. Usually you get 30%, and with the corruption 50%. At 30% it feels decent, at 50% it just goes nuts. As I showed you earlier on the picture. And the armor effectiveness rate is just a very premium stat after they nerfed Rock Magus. If you didn't know, you could basically get the stat for free last league, and this league is a lot harder to obtain. As for the trees, I'll quickly click through them, but there's not that much to explain other than maybe this one right here. Shared Fate got added this patch. It is basically your automation for your sentinels. You don't need to buy an automation medium, but yeah, that's pretty damn nice. Other than that, super important is the co-resonance, which is a blend on a belt. You can blend in the Oasis, and co-resonance makes it so your attacks and cast speed actually applies to your sentries. If you do not have this, you do basically no damage, and you will have to go for sentry cast frequency. And on that note, when it comes to that stat, you will see that it is completely absent from my build in Endgame, and that is because attack speed double dips, right? It gives me the damage for the sentry, but it also makes my Swift Shadow raid faster, right? Which is my movement skill. For Gemma, she's just a bunch of more multipliers. There's really not much to be said here. You go right, yeah. that's literally the only options you have anyways. And then on the last one, I guess it's really nice that she has 20% of Fizz taken as fire. That's also a little bit of a defensive adage, as a lot of hero talents maybe don't have. As for skills for endgame, the only thing I can tell you is if your main skill has supports, level them up 5 stars here, and you upgrade the skill means you get 20% more damage per support, right? So 20 and then another 20, that's 44% more damage in total. I'm not really doing anything specific. Do note that bows now have their own movement skill that is not on a cooldown. You can basically whirl around just like a melee skill could. My curse I currently have on activation medium elite, but I do want to get a dream talk over here for either my rings or my amulet, but it is incredibly expensive and already bricked round about 8,000 FE. For my aura setup, I'm currently using precise projectiles, which also gives you projectile speed, which aura effect also gives your Gale that we talked about earlier a more multiplier, right? Cruelty is very strong. And then I have a Flame Focus, which helps a little bit with Explodey. It gives a little bit of extra damage, and a Thunder Magus for more attack speed and more damage. But in general, this will be later respec'd into a triple Magus setup. That's a little bit more complicated. But then for the candles, I have wind projectiles. The nice thing about this one is the -2 projectiles doesn't do anything to Einherjar because it says projectiles don't affect it. So neither positively nor negatively. The only additional projectile you can get on the skill that you can shotgun with is this one right here. So that's basically it. It is not a downside. They're pretty cheap actually, and you get like 20% more damage and projectile speed. And then obviously you want a candle, this time not with a blessing candle for triggering, but for standing still. Because whenever you whirl around, you actually count as standing still, and you can see up here, I'm actually getting the charges just constantly. Hero memories, you want to go base, strength, armor, and attack speed. If you get armor somewhere else, you can also go for life, but armor is by far the most efficient here. Flat armor. And then here, a mixture of projectile speed, life, attack speed, crit multi, as you can see down here, they're all good. Now, I won't show every single version this time around, but I will show you the first one where I started out with around about 20,000 FE. This is what I farmed up on the mind control character, and then I swapped over up to what I have right now. But I first want to point out that there is a lot cheaper versions of the skill. However, I won't be giving you too much advice on that because I just haven't played it myself, so I don't know which one is the most efficient. But if you go to our Einherjar right here, you can see there's a lot of people who started Strength Stacker with me, right? And then there's also Theas, for example. They go into this is actually split. This is split shot Einherjar. Okay, I don't know exactly what that is, but you get the gist. You can look into different versions, right? I'm not claiming that mine is the best. Mine is just something that felt comfy to me. I'll show you where I started out with this. That's how I respec into it, and this is where you're gonna be like, oh wow. If you're used to mind control, where you're gonna get to like 10 billion damage on roundabout, what are you gonna pay? 2,000 to 3,000 FE. Yeah. So builds like this, the way it works. I'm going to quickly show you this. The way it worked with this build is there is a certain ramp up time. I started with a really shitty bow because this is all tier 2 mods because my money just ran dry. I bought all the gear that you see in my current version, these 3 items, and I just had this one as well. And I just had complete garbage gear otherwise. As you can see, tier 2 gear, the one you would see on day 1. But the thing with stackers is you have to start somewhere. You have to put an investment in. For example, 10 to 20,000 FEs to get all the items, and then you're still not very strong, right? You start scaling, and then you add multiplier over multiplier over multiplier, and you also get tankier because you get life per strength, you get armor per strength, and all of a sudden it kind of starts to make sense. But at the start, you're gonna be like, what the hell is going on? This is so much investment for so little, and then it just goes crazy. The reason I say this is not necessarily just because of this build. It's the same for stuff like Deck Stacker, Mana Stacker. They just start out very weak. For Mana Stacker, there's even more to buy before you can even start, like 40, 50,000, right? And that is simply because those builds will get you to deep space and they will scale the hardest, even though the start is a little bit rough. I know a ton of people who want to get into the endgame guide and they respec and they say, oh, I just paid 10 times what I paid on mind control and I still do the same damage. It's like, yes, but the more you scale, the more you'll understand. But yeah, this is basically where I started, and this was enough to carry me in 8-2s. I was farming 8-2s for a while to get into profounds, and once you're in profounds, you're really going to start to print. Now, let's quickly talk about Profounds and Deep Space and sort of Endgame in general. So once you complete the Time Mark 2, you can get to Profounds, and these have new drops on the right side: Sprout of Legends, Sacred Fossil, Deep Space Beacons. Super strong. But there is a new breed of mods that does get introduced here. So let's quickly see if I can find one to show you. So if you roll to 100%, okay, not here, this is not one of them. Basically, there's going to be mods here that are ailments, right? Rot, Scorch, Trauma, like I think it's like, I can't remember what it is, but you can hover over them and you see what they do. If they say that they're doing a dot, always reroll them unless you're immune to that ailment. They will literally one-shot you. You have no chance. And it's not like, oh, I'm res capped. You're going to go down like this. This is the way of the game to tell you that it's now time to get immunities. So if you're playing Profound and that happens to you, you have to reroll them, right? You have 3 rerolls down here that you can use. For example, this one, super easy. And these are always in red, by the way, at least in Profound. In Deep Space, you have to look a little bit closer. But in Profound, they're always in red and you will see them very clearly. Now, what are those immunities and how can you get them? For Profound, if you already started Profounds, maybe you got there on your mind control character, you can usually just reroll them, like I just said, and they are weaker versions, but if they're dots, they will destroy you. If it is, for example, freeze, it will actually not fully freeze you, so you can probably even do it, right? But if it's Scorch, if it's Rot or anything like that, GG's. But should you ever get to Deep Space, there's a few ways that you can do it. First up, you can get it on ring implicits. These are quite expensive. I'm talking bases that are between 3 to 5 KFE just for the base alone before you even started to craft. Immune to Trauma. This you can also get immune on Wilt on ring. You can get immune to slow on belt. You can get ailment immunity from all sorts of places. So ailments are the elemental ailments are Ignite, Freeze, and then also Numb. You can get those on ultimate affixes on your suffix, chance to avoid LA ailments. Just make sure that you realize you need 100%. Before 100%, this does nothing because you're still going to get hit sometimes. And then Cursed, but technically it exists, but also I'll just show you the prices real quick. It really doesn't exist, right? But you can also be immune to curses. Curses are really, really rough. What I personally do in Deep Space at the start is I just say, screw curses, because you can still reroll, right? And I just pick one of these that I don't care about. And I just leave curses open, reroll if I have to, and I protect myself against the others. Curse is the hardest one to get out of all of these by a mile. There is some other things you can do though, and those have to do with your pets. So right here, you will see that it's like tattoos in Path of Exile, right? You can tattoo over certain nodes and get stuff with micro fates and also medium fates. And these can come in different shades. I can cap my resistance, I can get extra stats. But if you go to the trade house at the bottom, you will actually see that there is different kinds of these, and there's a ton of them. If you look, for example, at micro fate survival, you can see right here, minus numb effect received, minus wilt damage taken. So 3 of these makes you wilt immune, right? 3 of these makes you trauma immune, and so on. So all the effects I showed you earlier basically negated. This is the one I'm going to use. I'm going to get these 2 immunities on separate rings, and then I'm going to get the slow immune from there, and then the other ones we're going to see. But yeah, all sorts of things you can do. The hardest one to get is once again Curse, because for Curse, you actually have to use a medium one. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to find it. It's probably somewhere here. But yeah, Curse immunity is just an absolute hell to get. So Curse immunity, probably something you can skip. And yeah, after that, why the big fuzz, right? Like, why would you pay, I don't know, what is it currently, 10 FEs more per Deep Space Beacon, 8.5, instead of the 3 or whatever you pay for Tier 8? What's the big deal there? Well, if you go here and you go to Deep Space, this game doesn't screw around with difficulty. I want you to understand this. So you go from 100 additional drop quantity to 200 straight up, which is insane. But you also, if you look up top, gain significantly increased drop rates. Cool. What does that mean? So whenever you drop a Sacred Fossil, you drop 6, right? Straight up. So those are like 30 FE a pop. And then also, whenever you drop a Sprout of Legends, which is basically like a reliquary key where you get a unique and whatnot, they cost like over 100 FE, you get 3, right? So small things like this will really add up, and you're going to see them a ton more because the level also goes up and the additional drop quantity. Deep Space, if you ever get to this and you see builds that get to like hundreds of thousands of FEs of investment, That's how this gets produced. There's other ways, but in terms of mapping, this is where you want to get to. But the jump from profound to deep space is quite profound. If you want to farm profound, you need around about 50 to 100 billion to start out with and to feel comfortable a little bit more. For deep space, it's more in the trillions of damage. And not only that, but you also need survivability and the immunities I just talked about, and those just cost a ton, and they will need you to remove other things from your build, which will then reduce your damage, so you have to adjust. But yeah, just wanted to make an update video, probably going to be my last one. If you want to see me blast deep space over the next coming days, you can check me out on twitch.tv/Palsteron. But other than that, yeah, I've been having a great league. I'll probably play another 4 or 5 days or whatever I feel like. I'm also going to check out Titan Quest 2 quite soon. But yeah, in general, super happy with the build, super happy with the transition. If you ever get the chance to try this out, maybe on a different version that's a little bit cheaper, or you actually save it up, then I would highly recommend it. Hope you guys are having a blast and some good currency returns. And since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.